I was at the local cross race last night, and my friend Maya came up to me, and she's going to go race the Ring of Fire this weekend. It's a 50-mile mountain bike race that's going to take her about 5 hours. And she wasn't sure if she should use the aid stations, if she should carry a hydration pack, water bottles. She just didn't really know what to do. And this is a really common quandary for a lot of riders when you get into long races. If your race is 2 hours or under, it's pretty easy. You're gonna be able to get by with bottles. Pretty sweet, no problem, no brainer. But once it gets longer than that, you've got some decisions to make. So one of the first things you need to do is you need to do a little bit of homework about the race, and you need to find out what is going to be at the aid stations. Particularly know if it's nutrition and hydration products that work for you. If you have a really fussy gut, this can be a make or break situation. So if they use products that do not jive with you, you know you're not really going to be able to use the aid stations, or you're filling up water and you've brought your own drink mix to add to it. That's a whole other complication, but doable in a pinch for sure. It's also important to know where on the course are the aid stations. So you may not need to use all of them. You're going to have some strategy about how much, particularly water, you're going to pick up at every aid station or whichever aid stations you choose to stop at. So deciding to use the aid stations, there's kind of 3 different aid station scenarios. The first, and the one that is most common for most riders, is you don't have any support at an aid station. You're going to roll into the aid station. You're going to get off your bike. You're going to drop it in the dirt. You're going to come up to the aid station. You may be doing this yourself. There may be volunteers there to help you, but they're going to refill your water bottles, refill your hydration packs. You're going to grab food, shove it in your mouth. You're going to grab food, shove it in your pockets, and off you go. A really fast aid station takes people a minute. It may seem like it's not taking you that long, but it's taking you a minute. When I look at my athletes' data and they're using aid stations, when they think they're going through aid stations really fast, it's usually taking them closer to 3 minutes an aid station stop. And that's just because it takes a bit to get off your bike, find a place to put it, run up. There's usually other riders there. There's some traffic to navigate. Oftentimes you find yourself taking care of other things, which is great. If you are going to stop and use an aid station, take care of everything you need to do between now and the end of the race, or now and the next aid station that you're planning at stopping at. Because the simple act of slowing down, stopping, getting off your bike, getting back to your bike, getting on your bike, and getting back up to speed is a time suck. So if you need to go to the bathroom, if there's some nagging mechanical that you know is going to go wrong, if you're overheating and you need to cool down and there's ice at the aid station, whatever it happens to be, take care of it there if you're actually going to stop. So there's my little spiel on aid stations. If you're using them, maximize that stop. So that's the normal situation for an aid station. Sometimes you're gonna have aid stations where you're gonna have your personal support crew. And this happens if you're on teams, sometimes if you're a sponsored rider, sometimes you've got support people at races. Dreamy when that happens. But aid stations then become really quick. You generally don't even stop. You're just gonna roll towards a feed zone. Your person's gonna have a bottle hanging out there. Hold them from the top if you're the person getting them so your rider can easily grab them. And, sorry, my cat. So easily grab them. You're just gonna slow. The bottle might have gels taped to it, whatever. You might be grabbing multiple bottles, so you've got multiple people there. You've ditched your water bottles before you came into it, and they're gonna go retrieve them out from the bushes. It's incredibly fast. If you have access to aid station help like that, you're so lucky. Use it, but practice beforehand, particularly taking bottles from your person so you both know what to do. You know which side of each aid station your person's going to be at, if they're going to be at the left and right side, if they're going to be at the front of the line or at the back of the line, just so you kind of have some ideas. And also come up with a plan in your brain of what happens if that handoff does not happen. Maybe your aid person got caught in some traffic jam and couldn't make it to the aid station. What are you going to do if they're not there? More critically, what are you going to do if you drop the bottle in the handoff? Just know what you're going to do at each aid station. Maybe there's another one coming up in another hour and you know you're going to be fine if you miss that bottle. You can make it to the next station. Or maybe it's such a critical feed spot that you're going to have to stop and wait for your support person to go grab the bottle and run back up and hand it to you. I don't know. Come up with a plan. Just make sure you have it because things go wrong in those feed zones. The other situation that happens with aid stations, especially in some of these longer races, is you can send a drop bag out to an aid station and they usually have your bib number on it. Again, this is the scenario. It's worth talking to the race officials and finding out what's going to happen at the places where your aid bag is there. Usually, they're a pretty tight crew and they've got a lot of volunteers. And as you're rolling in, they'll yell your number out if you've got an aid bag, and there's another person who's going to run and grab your aid bag and bring it to you. Or sometimes they're lined up in number rows and you're just going to go to the row that involves your race number and your bag's going to be waiting for you there. You're going to be able to do all your own swaps. For me, what I do in that case is I carry multiple hydration packs and I am just ditching one hydration pack and swapping out another. So it's an incredibly quick transition. You don't encounter those situations too often in races though. More often it's an aid station that you're going to have to stop and go manage. You're not going to have drop bags at. So those are the 3 typical aid station scenarios. So bottles and aid stations, or hydration packs and bottles. What are you going to do? So this becomes kind of a strategic question. So water in particular is heavy. A liter of water is a kilogram, or about a little over 2 pounds of weight. Now, everyone who's racing is got water weight on their bike. So if you're carrying a hydration pack, you don't have that much more weight on you compared to everybody else, but you do have more weight. The smaller of a rider you are, or the lower your watts per kg are, the more that weight is going to affect you. If you're pretty aerodynamic, that weight increase is not going to have a huge impact for you on the flats, but it is going to have a greater impact for you on climbs, particularly the steeper the climb is and or the longer the climb is. I'm going to share this really cool graph from the Transcontinental race, which is showing the time distance over the course for 80 kilogram rider, that's like 80 kilograms including the bike setup, versus 85 kilograms bike and rider setup. And over the course of that race, it was about a 2% difference for those riders in their overall time, assuming all other factors are neutralized, which it's not that big of a time difference, but it's still a time difference. And when, you don't want to lose a minute or two to your race because of weight, right? So there's kind of this magic calculation you've kind of got to do it, and deciding that every aid station at a minimum is going to cost riders a minute. Carrying an extra liter of water is going to cost you probably about a minute over 2 or 3 hours is kind of a fair estimate. So it does kind of become a bit of a wash. Again, unless you're a really small rider, it starts to become a little bit more in favor of carrying less weight. If you're a big rider and or have a massive watts per kg, this conversation becomes less important. So figure it out. If you are self-supporting, then you get into the question of how many hours can you actually support for? If your race is like 5-ish hours or under, you can probably do the entire race on everything you're carrying on yourself, unless you are somebody who has a really high sweat rate or it's insanely hot that day. If those are the factors, your hydration, you're just not going to be able to carry enough. But most riders are going to be able to carry enough hydration for 5 hours between a hydration pack and bottles on their bike. If you have a situation where that's not the case, or you're just kind of starting to think of strategy between hydration pack, bottles, aid stations, then it comes into where are the aid stations on the course? Because it might be that you carry a pack and you carry a bottle, but maybe the bottles are empty to start, and you're going to go through your hydration pack, and then you're going to stop at the very last aid station and you're going to fill your bottles to get you to the finish. Or maybe reverse that. One thing I think about if I'm going to be using a aid station in a race is that I would like to have the least amount of weight on me and on my bike when I get to the steepest and longest, most sustained climb on the course, if I can work that out. So if that's going to happen early in the race, I might start with just a hydration pack, and it might not even be totally full. And I might plan on calculating out when I'm going to run out of water on that. So usually on the backside of that, and then stopping and completely refilling all my hydration stuff and getting that to take me to the end of the race. So you can kind of use choosing those aid stations if you only need to use one, strategically based on the course profile. Some other considerations are what's going on in your race. When I race gravel, for instance, I'm typically at the pointy end with the pro women, and most of those pro women have support people at the aid stations, and I never do. So I'm self-supporting, and when we roll into aid stations, they don't have to stop. They just slow down and they pick up their water bottle hand-ups and they keep going. For me, if I need to use the aid station, I pull in there when they do, but I've got to get off my bike. I've got to go to the aid station, refill my bottles myself, carry them back to my bike, put them on my bike, jump on my bike. And at that point, the pack of women I was racing with, they're a minute down the course already. And I am now having to do a massive solo bridging endeavor to get back up. It is a huge disadvantage for me. And so I will choose to carry the extra weight because strategically it is such an advantage for me to be able to stay with that pack of women. When they slow down and go into the feed zone, I'm going to go onto the side of the course where the feed zone isn't going on. I'm going to slow a little bit. I'm going to use it as an opportunity to take down some of my own nutrition, casually, whatever. And I'm going to be kind of watching them and getting up to speed when they're all coming out of the feed zone. So it's like nothing happened. So consider all the factors when you're trying to decide and figure out a strategy for how you are going to fuel and hydrate for these longer off-road events, because it is tricky and it isn't a one size fits all, and it's not this works for me every time. Oh, but then one other thought, mountain bike races. One thing that happens to a lot of mountain bikers who decide to carry bottles, not hydration packs, is that they find themselves on courses where there is no opportunity to get at their bottles. The course is just flat out too technical that they almost never have an opportunity to get at their bottles. And do you know what's a whole lot slower than carrying some extra weight on your bike? It's bonking because you ran out of fuel and hydration, and cramping because you ran out of hydration. Those things are guaranteed to be a massive time suck on your race. So when that's the case, I'm almost always racing mountain bike courses because I always choose technical mountain bike courses to carry a hydration pack, because I know I'm going to be able to keep on top of my hydration for the entire race because it is so easy to get at that nozzle. And staying fueled and hydrated is such a performance advantage that will do leaps and bounds on me over somebody with a bottle. And then another consideration with bottle, if you're carrying bottles, depending on what your strategy is, I always try to drink these first because you do sometimes lose these on off-road courses. And it's better to lose them when they're empty than when they're full. So yeah, another consideration. And also if I'm carrying bottles, I've also mentally walked through what I'm going to do if I lose one or both of my bottles before I've had an opportunity to get to them. Because it generally means I'm doing an emergency aid station stop that I wasn't planning on. So even when my race plan includes not using the aid stations, I still do my homework and I know where the aid stations are and I know what's going to be at them as just a backup emergency strategy. So, that was a lot of information to share about how you figure out how to support your hydration and nutrition needs on a long off-road race course. But hopefully that gives you a whole bunch of things to consider and will help you come up with the right plan. And if you're totally stumped, reach out to me. I'd love to spitball some solutions with you. So yeah, race fast. Bye.